Zack Snyder's Watchmen is a very interesting movie. Um, let's get into this. So Zack Snyder's Watchmen is not a good movie. There are fans of it, of course. Lots of people love Zack Snyder's Watchmen. Lots of people just love any Zack Snyder movie. The only Zack Snyder movies that really don't have like a fan base sucking their dick is really just Owls of Gahul and Sucker Punch. But then again, Sucker Punch, there's talk of there always being a director's cut, so there's like fans who like, well, that's not his true vision. Hey, there might be a good version somewhere. I'm like, no, but okay. Watchmen is very fascinating, okay? Because Watchmen was this comic book written in the 80s, satirizing the political climate at the time, the Nixon administration, so many other things going on at the time. And it was satirizing 50 years of comic books and all these different ideas, right? So then you get this movie that comes out in, I believe, 2009. Keep in mind, 2009, Iron Man had literally just came out the year before. There was not an Avengers movie. There was not a Deadpool movie. There was not, I don't even think The Dark Knight had come out. Yeah, Dark Knight had not even come out yet. Think about how different superhero movies were, right? And so you get this movie that's like supposed to satirize the superhero genre and make commentaries on it. Before any of the superhero genre had really taken off. I mean, most we had was like Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Like, we didn't even have Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. We had one Spider-Man at this time. So, like, and so, there's interviews with Christopher Nolan calling this movie ahead of its time, which is kind of odd, because I don't like this movie whatsoever, because the reality is Alan Moore hated this movie. He did not want his name attached to it, because his thought process was, I wrote this story as a graphic novel, it belongs as a graphic novel, and he's correct. And you watch this movie, and you can tell that Zack Snyder didn't really care about the source material. There's two reasons that Zack Snyder adapted this movie. He adapted 300. 300 is a great movie, but 300 is Zack Snyder taking is Zack Snyder's first attempt at adapting a Frank Miller graphic novel. And 300 works as a Zack Snyder film because the source material is almost non-existent, where it literally is just dudes fighting each other. It's just action, and it's a super fun movie that's really well crafted. It's iconic, this is Sparta, right? All that stuff. Who doesn't love 300, right? It's a very masculine bro energy movie, so I guess, if you're super not into that type of movie, maybe you won't like it, but for the most part, that's what 300 is. It's great for what it's going for, right? So this is another Frank Miller adaptation, so clearly the dude likes Frank Miller. Or, not Frank Miller. I guess it's Alan Moore, sorry, my bad. But you know what I mean, he's kind of adapting comics from the same time period of similar ilk. Like, if you like Frank Miller, you like Alan Moore, right? So, you kind of get why it's happening, but then the other thing is, Zack Snyder doesn't like comic books. He likes adult comic books. So he likes the stories that have lots of sex and violence and blood, and you're like, fuck that. I mean, he even says shit like that in interviews, and you're like, that's fucking stupid. And so his favorite thing to do with comic book characters is deconstruct them. But it's so bad because Zack Snyder clearly doesn't understand what the fuck he's deconstructing. He doesn't like Batman. He just likes the idea of seeing Batman broken and beaten. And it's like, what the but you can't, see Batman broken and beaten down if you don't understand who the fuck Batman is before he's beaten and broken down, And so, this is what Zack Snyder likes to do, and you feel that in this movie. It's got these awkward sex scenes that are terrible. It's got, some great visuals. It's got some cool action sequences. in it, but for the most part, you just feel this guy who just does not understand comic books, who does not understand what he's satirizing, does not understand what he's going for with the politics at the time. He just made this movie because he liked that there's fucking sex and violence in it, and he wanted to do that, and he makes this very awkward, like, clunky movie, and I had to watch the complete or story edition, which is basically where they had to make a 3-hour director's cut, piecing it together with animation, and there's so much shit they had to change that misses the whole point of the graphic novel, right? Mostly because you can't make this shit a movie. You had to do this. You couldn't do the squid shit in the movie. So I don't know. I think if you have no love for the graphic novel, or you're just a mild fan of the graphic novel, I see why people kind of like this movie, because it almost feels like, oh, it's kind of getting it. You know, there's moments where it's direct adaptation. But the problem is, just because you're directly adapting something, like the Lion King remake, for example, that's a direct adaptation of the animation. It's not good. It misses the point and completely misunderstands what made the animation good. And that's the same thing here. Yeah, Zack Snyder's taking exact moments from the comic book and adapting it, but that doesn't mean he understands it. That doesn't mean it's good. And this is just a great example of that. Watchmen is a terrible movie, and I don't get why so many fans of his seem to like this one. I don't really get why there's Zack Snyder fans at all at this point, other than he makes interesting movies. But, like, what was the last good movie Zack Snyder did? I don't really know. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I like Army of the Dead. But other than that, Zack Snyder's been pretty bad lately. So, Watchmen, don't like this movie. I think it utterly fails at everything it's going for. And it's really not very interesting.